Okay, so let's take a look at how you can use the date function in SQL Server. So when you connect to SQL Server in SQL Server Management Studio, and simply click on this connect. I'm using Windows authentication to connect to SQL Server. Now next thing I'm going to do is choose one of the database and run a query. You can pick on any default if you want, right click on the database and then click on new query. Right, so here we will have first query for our date function, which is going to make use of NSI date format, right? So we'll use declare, then @existing date, then space date time, then set, then existing date. You can use the autocomplete, and then you can use get date, right? So here you see. Now this being a function, make sure you use respective brackets, then use select, then convert. Now this convert function takes on two parameters, one being varchar and second being existing date, right? And then you'll also have to specify the number. So this one second being for ANSI format, right? So we use as, and then within square bracket we use YYMMDD, right? Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to run this query by clicking on execute, and here you see it will show you the day being 2nd of September, month being September, and year 2022, right? So if you are seeing this in near future, you may get different date, right? Now this was specific for ANSI format. You can use British, type in 3 here for that change, right? Also you can shift to British format being DD, then MM, then YY, right? And now again you can execute, and here you see 2nd of September, month 09, and then 22. You can use 4 times Y so that it will show you the whole year, right? So as you can see, that makes no difference. So for some reason it will only limit it to 22, right? So that was for our ANSI format displaying the date, right? So if you want to specifically get date in month and day format with few changes, we can also use one more change, which is going to be 7, and here we can use month, right? And then YY, right? So this is one more change. Here I'm using 7 for this particular change. Click on execute. Okay, so incorrect syntax near 7, right? So let's take a look at that. Now the change we need to make is turning this into uppercase and then execute. So here we get now notice that the issue was with uppercase M, right? So they want lowercase, so we replace this and execute. Okay, few more functions that you can use. Basically you can get the current system date and time using select and then sys, date time, right? So this being a function, let's use the brackets and execute, and you get the current date, time and seconds. Similarly, there are a few changes that you can make. Is we can use this date time offset. It being a function, you will close the bracket, execute it, and here you see the current time zone that gets added to our output, right? There is also few things like UTC date time, so let's try some of that. So this UTC date time, okay, and now let's execute. We get UTC current date, also time and second, right? Now there is also current timestamp function, so current timestamp, right, execute, and notice there is one thing that says there is an error. So we'll take a look at what that error is. This is not a function, this is just a statement. So when you pass it, it will give same output as this date time. Similarly, there is also get date. Can type in, execute, and we get the same output like system date time, right? And finally, there is also get UTC date, right? So get UTC date, right, and then execute. Next thing, getting the current system date with convert function. So we already used it previously. So what we'll do is we will use now with convert function. What we can do is we can use select then convert, and inside this function we will pass on few parameters like say date, and also we will pass on, let's say, sys date time. So if I pass on this, let's see the output. Here you see it will give me the current date, right? Similarly, what if I use few of the other functions that we checked like this date time offset, right? And if I execute this, and we get the same output. Similarly, we can also get UTC date time, so this UTC date time, right? And if I run this, it should give me similar output, right? Similarly, you can also use get date or get UTC date. You can check that out as well. All of them would give you same output, right? So let's say if I execute this, it will give me the same output. Now there is also current system time. So for that, I'll just have to replace date with time. Okay, sorry, it should be lowercase time, then sys date time. This being a function, we will have to use bracket, and we get current sys date time. We can also get sys UTC date time, right, and then execute this and you get similar output. Also, you can use get date time or get UTC date, and both of them should return the similar output, right? So that's for your typical output with multiple different functions. Again, there are a few things that you can get using your date functions in SQL Server, one being date part. So if you want to extract some part of date, like say year or month, we can do so. So let's use select date part and within that function we will pass here to extract it. So we will use get date, and if we run this query it will return the year. So if we choose to use month, we can get the month. Finally we can get the day, execute, and we get the day, right? Like this we can extract the dates. Similarly, there is one more method to work with this, which is, let's say if I want to get day, and for that we will use day function and then get date, and we then pass on as day, right? If I execute this, it should extract that particular day. If I change this to month, get date as month. If I execute this, you get the month, which is September, right? Likewise, there are a few other functions that you can check whether a particular date is a date or not, or it's a null value or something like that. You can do that too, right? Similarly, we can also extract string values, something with date name. So select date name and then use year and then get date, right? And we then pass on year, right? And if we extract that, it should return year as 2022, right? Similarly, we can do the same for month, right? And instead of year we just pass on month, execute this, and we get month as a string value. We got year, month, and day as day, and you get your day as well. These are some of the functions that you can check with your SQL Server, and you can use it for making the queries.